What drives a person to desecrate a symbol of love and loss, knowing the eyes of a small town are watching? In the quiet hamlet of Willow Creek, where every face was familiar and every story shared, a single act of vandalism shattered the peace. The memorial bench for Grandma Eleanor, a beloved figure whose kindness had touched every soul, became the stage for a drama that would unravel secrets, expose raw emotions, and leave scars no one could ignore. Eleanor Harper had been the heart of Willow Creek. Her tiny bakery on Main Street was more than a place for warm bread and apple pies. It was where children learned to dream, where elders found solace, and where strangers became friends. When she passed at 78, the town pooled their savings to build a simple wooden bench by the creek, engraved with her name and a single phrase, "For Eleanor, who loved us all." It was a sacred spot, where people left flowers, whispered prayers, or simply sat to feel her warmth linger. Enter Karen Mitchell, a woman whose sharp tongue and sharper temper were as infamous as Eleanor's kindness. Karen had moved to Willow Creek 5 years ago, fleeing a messy divorce and a life she never spoke of. She opened a boutique selling overpriced candles and trinkets, but her real mark was her complaints about noisy kids, untidy lawns, or the town's backward ways. To Karen, Willow Creek was a cage, and its people were her captors. Yet, no one could have predicted the storm she'd unleash. It was a crisp October morning when Jamie Torres, the town's young librarian, noticed something wrong. The bench, usually pristine, was defaced. Red spray paint slashed across Eleanor's name, spelling out cruel words: fake, forgotten, fraud. Flowers lay trampled, their petals scattered like tears. Jamie's gasp drew a crowd, and soon the town square buzzed with shock and anger. Who could do this? Why? Whispers pointed to Karen. She'd been seen arguing with old Mr. Callahan, Eleanor's best friend, just days before, ranting about the bench being an eyesore that blocked her shop's view. Her disdain for the town's reverence for Eleanor was no secret. But suspicion wasn't proof, and Willow Creek prided itself on fairness. Sheriff Lila Bennett, a no-nonsense woman with a heart as big as her badge, promised to investigate. Lila's first stop was Karen's boutique. Karen stood behind the counter, her arms crossed, her eyes defiant. "I didn't touch that stupid bench," she snapped. "Why would I? It's just a piece of wood." But her alibi was shaky. She claimed she'd been home alone, and her car's GPS placed her near the creek at midnight. Lila didn't arrest her yet, but the town's trust in Karen was crumbling. As days passed, tension grew. The vandalism wasn't just an act. It was a wound. People stopped visiting Karen's shop, and her usual complaints were met with icy silence. But then came the twist no one saw coming. A new figure stepped into the spotlight. Claren Gwynn, a shy high school senior who volunteered at the library, approached Lila with trembling hands. She'd seen something the night of the vandalism: a figure in a hoodie. Not Karen, but someone smaller, sneaking away from the bench. Clara hadn't spoken up sooner, terrified of being wrong, but guilt had gnawed at her. She handed Lila a grainy photo from her phone, showing a shadowy figure clutching a spray can. The town was stunned. If not Karen, then who? Lila dove into the clue, tracing the hoodie to a thrift store purchase made by Ethan Walsh, a reclusive teenager who'd lost his mother to cancer a year before Eleanor's death. Ethan was an outsider, often seen sketching by the creek, his quiet demeanor hiding a storm of grief. When Lila confronted him, he broke down. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," he sobbed. "I was angry. Everyone loved Eleanor, but no one remembers my mom. She didn't get a bench. She got nothing." Ethan's confession hit Willow Creek like a thunderbolt. The town had mourned his mother, but their focus on Eleanor's legacy had left him feeling invisible. The vandalism wasn't about hate for Eleanor, but a cry for his own loss to be seen. Yet the plot thickened. Lila's investigation revealed a detail Ethan hadn't shared. Karen had seen him that night. Instead of reporting him, she'd confronted him, demanding he clean it up. When he refused, she'd kept silent, letting the town's suspicion fall on her. Why would Karen take the blame? The answer lay in a secret she'd buried deep. Years ago, in another town, Karen had been the grieving one, her own mother forgotten after a public scandal. She'd seen herself in Ethan's pain, and in a rare moment of compassion, she'd chosen to shield him. But her silence came at a cost. The town's anger had turned her into a pariah, and the bench's desecration had reopened old wounds for everyone. The case went to trial, a public spectacle in the town hall. Karen faced charges of harassment, not for the vandalism but for her heated confrontation with Ethan, which had escalated into threats caught on a neighbor's security camera. The town watched, torn between justice and pity. Ethan testified, his voice breaking as he admitted his crime. But Karen's role was murkier. She'd protected him, yet her aggression had fueled the town's rage. The judge, a stern outsider named Margaret Voss, listened as townsfolk poured out their grief. Jamie spoke of Eleanor's laughter, Mr. Callahan of her generosity, and Clara of her own regret for staying silent. Karen took the stand, her usual bravado gone. "I didn't touch the bench," she said, her voice low, "but I know what it's like to feel erased. I thought I was helping that kid, but I messed up. I always do." For the first time, Willow Creek saw her not as a villain but as a woman broken by her own past. Yet the law was clear. The judge convicted her of harassment, sentencing her to community service and a public apology. The trial's end didn't heal the town. Ethan's punishment was lighter restitution and counseling, but his confession had shifted the blame, leaving Karen to face the town's judgment alone. On the day of her apology, she stood by the newly restored bench, her hands trembling as she spoke. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely audible. "Not just for what I did, but for what I didn't understand you all." Some nodded, others turned away, and a few, like Clara, offered quiet forgiveness. But the story's end was no fairy tale. The bench, though repainted, bore faint scars of red paint, a reminder of the hurt. Ethan left Willow Creek, unable to face the eyes that now saw him differently. Karen stayed, but her shop closed, and she became a ghost in the town she'd never truly joined. The creek still flowed, the bench still stood, but Eleanor's warmth felt dimmer, tainted by the bitterness of human flaws. Willow Creek learned a hard lesson. Love and loss bind us, but so do anger and silence. The bench remained a place for reflection, but now it carried a heavier truth, not just of Eleanor's kindness, but of a town's struggle to forgive, to understand, and to heal. And Karen, once the villain, became a mirror, reflecting the pain we all carry when we feel unseen. ND.